If you could tell me a little bit about what it was like when you and Penny first formed the band.
Well, I mean, I don't think that either of us were that particularly serious about it. I mean, it was just, I sort of just had this vague idea of starting a punk band somehow, and I was around at Penn's and he just said to me, well, I've got a drum kit, I'll play drums for you. And I went, great.
Cool.
And we just started diddling about with some lyrics that I'd written. I don't think that me and him thought it would get any further than the Garden Gate, to tell the truth. It would, it was just going to be a sort of weekend thing to shock the middle-class hippies who were still going to, what was to become the Crass house at that time. And then the funny thing was that as people came over to visit, they, what you up to? And me or Penn would say, I was starting a punk band. And then I'd say, I've got a guitar, I'll play guitar for you. And so these people just sort of chose to join.
Right. That's pretty cool. You say that you were already writing lyrics. Were you aware at the time that sort of the punk bands that you've been sort of inspired by to write songs, did you feel that they were already selling out, or did you want to be part of a movement from the first wave punk at that time?
I didn't think. I think when I first started, I don't think I felt they'd sold out at that point. The Clash was still in England, and the Pistols. I mean, I think the Pistols were already banned, but I mean, you could go and see bands like X-Ray Specs still, and the Adverts and the Damned and things.
Okay.
But I mean, that early on, I mean, I didn't really, all I knew was that I wanted to be part of this new thing that was occurring called punk rock, and it wasn't until I'd been in it for a few weeks or maybe a couple of months or something that, I suddenly realised it was bigger than just a faction. Because it was literally a whole movement sort of suddenly came up, and I'm talking about fanzines and people, filmmakers, poets, dramatists, everyone was sort of getting in on it, and suddenly this huge wave of new bands came along and new artworks. Little shops were popping up doing T-shirts and badges and whatever. So, early on I didn't have any concept of it was anything more than just a fashion. It wasn't until later when, I suppose Crass sort of got established that, suddenly it hit well until the Pistols and the Clash went to America and didn't come back. Suddenly I realised that they had sort of sold out, and that it was up to us. Sounds a bit grandiose, but it was up to us to sort of, clear up our own backyard first and then maybe try America.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you said about fanzines and art. Would you say they were just as important as the music?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because I think back sometime, it's strange because if I listen to, say, for example, J.D. Jones, by the Clash, I'm right back there in '77.
Yeah.
And I can remember what it felt like, the excitement and just the buzz of sort of, going to a little grotty hall at the back of a pub somewhere, seeing a sort of dreadful three-piece band banging out something, but picking up fans and just people talking, and obviously the Soul Fate helped a little bit, but, all these great ideas that people had, and, we were all going to sort of give the world a run for its money sort of thing, and it was, and the fanzines and stuff, artwork and stuff that people were doing was all, all a part of that. I mean, certainly the graffiti was great in those days because the graffiti tended to mean something back then rather than just someone sticking their stupid name up,
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, a lot of people brand Crass, Conflict, all these sort of bands as anarcho-punk now, but also I've heard that Penny said that he doesn't like it to be called anarcho-punk or doesn't want it to be branded. Some people say art punk. What would you give it a name, or would you say that that's to be avoided?
No, it's just a bloody racket, wasn't it? It works. I mean, how do you describe? How can you describe something like, Crass? I mean, it was unique,
Yeah.
to me. I mean, I must admit, when I first heard Feeding of 5,000, I didn't like it because it was too tinny. There wasn't enough bass on it for me. Of course, I wanted it to sound like the bloody Clash or whatever, deep pumping bass. But looking back on it now, and see, I just, do you know what? I've tried and I've time. Yes, it is sort of punk rock. I wouldn't go so far as to call it anarcho punk or whatever. That's a sort of hand label that people put on it. You know, you've got to be able to describe it by something, so that's as good or as bad as any.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't know how you what is it? Semi-jazz? What is it? You know,
Yeah.
it's weird, isn't it? It's so unique.
Yeah.
So I really don't know. But I mean, you know, to me, I just called it punk rock.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So at the time, what kind of films or art or bands would you say that influenced you to sort of get really angry about what was happening with society and religion and things like that? What kind of culturally were you really into?
Well, I'd already been, I was already a great film watcher, and from an early age, I'd been watching the black and white films of the 60s, like Taste of Honey, or certainly Cathy Come Home, and that was, just that sort of injustice and stuff always was there within me. And it's just that I suppose really that when I got into punk, that sort of was what I started to really write about in a funny way. So I wasn't going out to see films or anything like that. I mean, the bands that influenced me, I would say, influenced me, inspired me.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Clash and the Pistols, for that. But I mean, just generally what was happening. The inspiration was everywhere you went. I remember seeing a band called Dead Man's Shadow, at a sort of squat gig, and the sound wasn't that fantastic, but for some reason they were just doing it that night, and actually made me turn around, and watch them. So it's funny little things like that happened. It's very hard for me. I'm not evading the question, but it's really hard for me to put my finger on one sort of aspect.
No, that's a really good answer. No, thank you.
Because it was all around at the time. It was just part of, it was all part of the same thing.
Yeah. Would you say that since Crass that you feel that there's anybody today doing what well, obviously not what you were doing back then, but any bands today that sort of reflect your sort of anger or your ethos?
I don't mean this horribly, but no, I don't. I don't mean that badly. I think partly it's because really I'm not sure that many people are that interested, because it's too cosy with things like the X Factor and Lady Gaga and stuff like that. So I'm sure there are people out there, trying to do something similar, but I don't think they'll ever reach the sort of heights that Crass or Conflict or the rest of the bands did. I think it's a shame, but it's funny because I'm waiting for a bunch of young kids to come along and sort of blow my socks off.
Yeah.
And for me to go, wow, that's what I wanted to say. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure it will happen one day, but I just, I can't see it happening at the moment. What have people got to protest about? I know what I want to protest about, but I really don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
What a crap answer that was.
no, it's fine.
Sorry about that problem.
No, because I'm talking about like influences in my essay, and I'm talking about sort of what was behind your thought process when writing, and then how that what the legacy of that was. I'm sort of talking about this, Conflict, obviously.
Yeah.
How Crass inspired Conflict, and also today there's this band called Slaves. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're a two-piece punk band, and they say that they're heavily influenced by Crass, and the singer stands up and just smacks the crap out of two crashes, a snare drum and a floor tom, and then he's got a backing vocalist who just plays like guitar really heavy, and their lyrics are sort of like feeding blood money to the vulture, counting your cards in popular culture, things like that. Real sort of quite like inspired by what you were doing. But obviously, when you were doing the DIY label, major labels were so influential. I mean, some of the biggest selling records ever, even up until today, were out in the 70s, and
Yeah,
people have never been able to match those kind of heights of like how the record labels, the majors like Universal and Sony and EMI were like so huge at that time, and now they've gone down and down since punk. And
yeah.
if somebody starts a DIY record label now, it's sort of okay, well another one's popped up, but you guys were the first really to do it. So what was the drive behind that? Was it just sort of just having a go really?
Well, yeah, partly just having a go, but I mean, we'd said that we were, that we weren't going to sell out, and really hard lines, so we had to stand by our word,
Yeah,
and that's what we did. And really, it's not being flippant or anything, but because none of us had really ever had any money, the fact that money was coming in, well, we just used to put that money into the next project,
yeah,
or we used to give out leaflets and badges at gigs for free, just information things. And every gig we did was a benefit, so we just used to get petrol money, and we thought, well, if we did it, maybe the bigger bands would sort of try doing that, the ones who could really afford it. So that's also why we deliberately went out to small places, like say Winsford in Cheshire, or right up there, bloody Cumbria, where nobody had ever, out in the wilds of Wales, where people didn't go. And because we thought, well, why should we expect everyone to come to London? We'll go there. And we used to get audiences and things, 50p a quid to get in or whatever. And bands like Conflict and Subhumans and, Flux Pink Indians followed suit, and what happened was this sort of punk circuit went all over the country, which was great. But none of the big bands like, Generation X and obviously the Pistols had split up, the Crash and the Damned, the established bands, they didn't really get involved with that. So, I mean, maybe they were too big, I don't know, but that's what we thought, that was the drive behind it, and it's like, and for us it was, well, keep that punk ethos of, because I remember seeing a little bit of footage of a Crass gig, and it's the only little bit I've seen, and it looked pretty amazing, there's all these banners everywhere and stuff like this, and it's all black and dark, and it looks really sort of well put together, but to tell the truth, I remember it all being just bits of wood nailed and gaffer tape, and all this stuff, and it was just old bed sheets we had lying around, we'll paint a banner on that then, we ended up sleeping on the banners. So it was a real sort of, we've got to do it, we keep the price down, we've got to keep the price down, that's what we said we'd do, and anyway, that's what it was about, so that, I think that was the driving force behind it.
yeah, that's brilliant. Okay. Would you say, like, even though you went all over the country, and obviously there was a big punk uprising in a lot of different areas,
Yeah.
would you say there was a real homecoming place, like, where you felt that it was the most influence on your fans, like an apex of Crass gigs?
No, not really. I mean, what you mean, what was their favourite place, for example, London, because that was our home turf.
Yeah, like, did you have like a bigger following, sort of, when you played London, or?
Well, I think there were more people there, because obviously it's a bigger city, and if you compare London to, say, let's say Aberdeen in Wales, where we played,
Yeah.
you're going to get more people at London than Aberdeen, but, wherever we played, it was the same intensity, a feeling from the audience. It's been said, and I sort of agree, really, that Crass gigs were very strange events, I mean, we used to get up there and used to be a bit of a fight or something, a couple of boneheads bashing the shit out of each other, but, we'd play, and then, really, it was almost as though the gigs were like a meeting place for people. People would just stand around talking, talking, exchanging ideas and all this and that, and then it was almost like Crass getting on stage was almost secondary to that. So it's for me, I can't. Yeah, there were more people at the London gigs, obviously, or Manchester, but as I say, the intensity was just as just as extreme wherever you played.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I want to ask you few questions just about the song Big A Little A specifically.
Yeah.
I recently got the book Love Songs by Crass, which tells you who wrote each set of lyrics, and it said that Penny had written the lyrics for that. Is that right?
Yeah.
So did you write any of them at all?
Well, Big A Little A?
Yeah.
Nah.
Okay.
No.
Do you remember how the song came about in rehearsal?
Yeah, it's really strong. I remember Penn saying to me that he'd written this song, and I was like, Big A Little A, what the hell's that? And he went, that's a nursery rhyme. And I was like, okay. Typical Penn thing. And I said, so, what? And Penn said to me that when he wrote it, he had this idea of the Glaswegian punk in his head, and what sort of song could he imagine this sort of Glaswegian punk shouting along to.
Right.
And he's apparently the words just sort of came. It was just one of those. I think he did it in about 20 minutes. I'm not sure.
Really?
It just sort of suddenly appeared. But I really liked it. Obviously it's a sort of really catchy tune. It's like spot on for me. But all those little bits. If Moses did it with his face, she'll do it with her army. All this kind of thing. And it's brilliant song. Brilliant song.
Okay. At the start, when you've got the children singing that nursery rhyme, was that the original melody, or did you make the melody up just from the
No,
nursery rhyme?
I think that is actually how the nursery rhyme goes. Big A Little A, bouncing bee, cats in the cupboard and can't catch me.
Yeah. Okay. Were the kids like friends or family, or were they
the children's voices were Eve Libertine's son and Phil Free's 2 sons and his daughter.
Oh, amazing. Okay.
Yeah, it was the best kids, yeah.
So was the nursery rhyme significant at all? Was it just something that Penny thought that was common, people would recognise?
You'd really have to ask him about it, Paul. But I think that it might have been something that came from his childhood or something like that.
Yeah.
I really can't remember that.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking that obviously on the record you deliver that song with such conviction, and it's quite interesting the way when you think about it, it's sort of displayed like a theatre, like a play, because you're taking on all these characters, but the listener is grounded in your voice when it comes back to the external control section, so that when it comes to your part, there's no need for you to introduce, hello, I'm Steve Ignorant. It's obvious. Did you put a lot of thought into that, or was that just natural?
That just came naturally.
Yeah.
Obviously, hello, 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 this is your Lord God, can you hear? I always used to shout that bit in a sort of a semi-vicary type voice, or, the voice of God or whatever, and then, hello, 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 is a message from your Queen. Very tempting to do it in a camp style voice, but, no, so I did it, as the, sort of taking the piss out of the Queen's voice.
Yeah.
And it just sort of came naturally. It's really funny the way me and Penn used to work together, because he would quite often come up with something I'd just know instinctively how to deliver it. And that one was definitely, I just instinctively knew, that's the way it should be done. At the end, there's that long middle bit, which is really quite fast, and, there's not really that much room to take breaths to sort of muck about with it too much, so that was delivered directly.
Yeah.
But no, you're right, that it is a great to perform it, when I used to perform it, it was a great theatre piece, and let me loose to sort of do actions and all that sort of stuff, and great song.
Okay, wicked. Like that part that you just mentioned, I sort of think of it as a rap section.
Yeah.
I mean, I know this was 81, so did you have any intention of like merging sort of like the genre of punk with the idea of rap, or was this just like a poetical feel?
No, that was just a political. That's really strange. Because at that time, I don't think rap had. I think it might have just been starting in America, and that's really strange you should mention that, because the first time I was in I went on holiday to New York, and I was down at Coney Island, and this black family went past with a great big ghetto blaster, as that was called in those days, huge
Yeah.
bloody thing, with this amazing stuff coming out of it. And I went to them, I went, excuse me, but what is that you're listening to? And they said, have you never heard of scratching? And I was like, no, what's that? And they sort of explained it. And I came back to England, and was desperately trying to find, this rap scratch music. And the only thing I could find was a sort of compilation album put out by Virgin or something, which was, pretty lightweight. But then, thank Christ, Grandmaster Flash came along, and that's Bambata and those sort of people. And I was able to sort of find it, a little bit more stuff. And that's when I started writing. I could instantly see, that I could do rap stuff, and it's really strange because when I was in later bands, like I was in a band called Schwarzenegger,
Yeah.
and a band Stratford Mercenaries, and a few of those songs I did definitely rap style. It's just it was a complete, to me, it was just a no-brainer. The two intermingled perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true, because I think a lot of rap comes from a real, it comes from like a grassroots place, as in these people have been through a lot, they're angry, they're poor, and they want to have a go, and they want to put that down in a song so that people understand that, and punk is on the level.
Yeah. Well, what appealed to me with the whole rap thing, and the breakdancing, which came along at the sort of roughly the same time,
Yeah.
was that I heard from a friend who was a DJ in New York that it's one theory is that it kicked off in the South Bronx, where there was a lot of inter-gang, murdering and stuff going on.
Yeah.
And to sort of try and sort of stop the killings, and the leaders of gangs were sort of instead of having fights, like rumbles and stuff, they were actually having rap-offs to each other. So that or breakdancing competitions, to show who could do the fancy moves rather than shoot at each other. But I mean, obviously the stuff they're talking about comes from that gang culture. I think it got terribly mistreated with the gangster rap rubbish.
Yeah.
Which I think is just fucking awful, sexist bollocks.
Yeah.
But
there's people that took punk and made it into something that wasn't supposed to be as well. Like,
Well, yeah.
It's.
I mean, let's face it. Anything that comes along that's going to make a buck or two, you're going to, someone's going to sort of pinch it, and someone's going to sell it out.
Yeah.
That's just inevitable.
So when you were just saying that you had this ghetto blaster and you had rap, was that before you sang Big A Little A? Was that
Let's
after?
see, Big A Little A was 1983. I think it was just after that I heard the rap stuff.
Oh, okay. So you could have been the first ever rapper.
Well, that's what I wanted.
Inadvertently.
I wanted to be the first ever white punk rapper, but unfortunately some twat called Vanilla Ice beat me to it.
Oh. Well, I don't think you've got any threats from him now.
No. He's got bigger tattoos than me.
He's still a knob, though.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm running out of time, so I've got 2 more questions left, if that's all right.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so you might not even know this. It's just a bit of a random one. At the end of the song, Big A Little A, this police officer approaches a man.
That's Feel Free, yeah.
Who was that?
That was Feel Free.
Oh, right, okay.
Hello. No, that was John Loader.
Oh, right, yeah, hello.
Hello.
So the man responds to the officer.
Yeah. Fair cop, Gov.
Yeah, fair cop, Gov.
That's me.
And then he runs away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's me running down me running down the street outside Southern Studios.
Okay, I was just wondering if he said fair cop, Gov, because I wasn't sure. But then I was wondering what that bit was about.
Yeah, hello. Fair cop, Gov.
Yeah.
And then you hear the footsteps running away. Yeah, I do that. I had to run on that bloody road about 20 times.
So is that sort of reflective of a common occurrence of being a punk?
Yeah, and I mean, fair cop, Gov is what it's what your criminals in the old black and white films say to the policeman. When the hand is laid on the shoulder, come along, lad. Fair cop, Gov.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's sort of like an end to the theatre production in a way, where you've come down to reality, said your piece, and then you've been arrested for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well,
All this blustering, yeah, and you still been, yeah, and still try and get away up Parkhurst Road, I think it was called, yeah.
it's great. It's funny because people say punk is quite simplistic in ways, and I can see the chord progressions. Yeah, they are 3-4 chord songs, but in the conviction to the message and the lyrics that are put forth, like they're really complex. They're really thought out, like clever songs.
Yeah, well, I think what helped us there was that none of us were musicians, so we weren't stuck in that rut of like, oh, you know, it's got to be 3 chords like C, G, and D or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
When we, you know, for example, we did a song called Mother Earth, which is about Myra Hindley, and I remember Penn saying to Feel Free, you know, he didn't say, Phil, put more treble on your guitar. Penn said, Phil, for this song, I want your guitar to sound like it's killing someone. And so we were more concerned with atmospheres
Yeah.
to go around the lyrics rather than melodies, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But because of the various influences that we all had, like, you know, I'd come up from ska, David Bowie and The Who and, you know, Small Faces and stuff. And Penn had come up through jazz and bloody classical music. You had Pete Wright come up through Frank Zappa. So you've got this whole mishmash
Yeah.
of different musical styles in there, which is what I fit. And plus, we, as I say, we weren't musicians, so we weren't bound, you know, by the rules of songwriting. So, you know, so why does a song have to be 8 lines long in the chorus, in the verse, and then 4 lines in the chorus, and then a bridge, and then, you know, a middle bit, and then back to the thingy?
Yeah.
No,
Definitely.
why can't we have it 5? And then, because if you listen to like Others to Live In, the first verse is 6 lines, and then the rest of the verses are 4.
Yeah, I've
but it
looked
still
through it.
works in this funny, quirky way. So I think that's, you know.
Yeah, no, it does work, like, definitely. I mean, that's the thing, it flows seamlessly, but I went through it and sort of counted out each section in bars and looked at the lyrics and where they fit, and it's just like, it's really like all over the place, like quite erratic, but you never, when you're listening to it, think, oh, that shouldn't have happened, you know, because it just works.
Yeah.
When a lot of songs before and after that are very much, you know, middle 8-bar chorus, 16-bar verse, and it's just boring. I mean, I'm a drummer, and when I learn a song, I most of the time can listen to it and once and go, right, so every section's 8 bars long, sort of thing. And you guys break away from that.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got to run. Thank you so much.
That's right, Paula. Well, I'll see you at the Grosvenor, yeah?
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So you gave some really great answers and it was really helpful.
Cheers, mate. All right, I'll catch you later.
All right, cheers. Take care.
All right. Ta-ra.
Bye-bye.